Hello, my name is Mortal Smurf, and I was sent this save file and told there's a huge infestation. And there is. It's a 30 hive infestation. This save file has both the royalty and ideology DLC, and it has no mods of any kind. This video is my second attempt doing this save. Both attempts were done without pausing. In the first attempt, I got a little impatient and melee blocked and chucked grenades. A few of the melee blockers and some slaves died, but we killed the entire 30 hive infestation. I'll put a clip of that fight at the end. In this second attempt, I'm going to be a little more patient. I should still have been more patient. Fair warning, I'm going to execute this poorly. To me, that's the fun of no pause. You make mistakes, you try to live with them, and you get yourself into crazy situations, and then you have to try and get yourself out of them. Surprisingly, this save isn't so much about the 30 hive infestation as it is about managing mood. It took me 2 hours of real time, no pause playing, to get to the point where I felt like I could even attempt to defeat the insects. If I would try sooner, most of the colonists would probably mentally break far before the fight was over. I condensed this 2-hour fix-up into about 20 minutes by cranking up the playback speed. From here on out, the playback will be at 6 times speed. For the fights, I'm going to turn that down to about 2.5 times speed. Let's go. So between no pause and the 6 times playback speed, I'm not going to be able to keep up with all the crazy things that are happening. Like there was the Tri-Phase schedule right there, and now I'm going to do lots of stuff in the work tab. It's just going to be impossible for me to keep up, so I'm just going to mostly talk about general things. If you have any questions about why I did certain things, hopefully I'll address that later in the video. Like I'm going to try and go through every single topic individually, but feel free to ask questions below, but honestly some things are just mistakes. On no pause, and I have no idea what's going on, you have to make snap judgments, and you have to do things quickly, and you jump around from task to task. There isn't really a lot of time to consider and do things properly, so a ton of mistakes are being made here. But the thing I think about most in Rimworld, how I want to set up my base, how I want to set up my colony, I'm thinking about 3 topics: food, mood, and bad dudes. So the bad dudes on this one's pretty clear. We've got a 30 hive infestation. And I don't really need to consider raids, because any raid that shows up, it's probably just going to get annihilated by the insects. One thing to keep in mind, well, a few things to keep in mind about the insects, is they sort of have like a 10 or a 15-second timer. Anytime an insect takes damage or dies, even if it's not your fault, even if it's a wild animal hunting an insect, even if like a caravan shows up and shoots the insect once, anytime an insect takes damage, there's going to be 10 or 15 seconds of all the insects going hostile. Every time they take damage, that clock resets. So if someone's constantly shooting or constantly punching an insect, they're resetting that timer over and over again. So to get the insects to unaggro, you need to stop damaging them entirely. I also need to be aware that at any point in time, an insect could get hurt for some stupid reason, like they could collapse the roof on their head, and they're all just going to run at me and hostile. So this big base is simply indefensible. I need to make a stone wall around what I can and save what I can, because the insects are going to go hostile, and then they're going to be aggressive for at least 10 to 15 seconds. After they de-aggro, wherever they are, sometimes they just stop and mine in place. So even if they're not bashing your walls, they may de-aggro and then mine out a wall. So it's incredibly dangerous, the infestation. We can't defend this whole place, so we're going to move everything to the west. The second major thing is mood. Or let's go with food, actually. Let's go food, because that's simple. There's a freezer already made, and there's a horde of tamed animals, but there aren't really many vegetables. The plan for food is simple. Anytime we get hungry, we're going to slaughter one of these animals and eat them. And hopefully that'll just get us through the winter. We can also go hunt an animal real quick, but just slaughtering the big herd, that's the plan. For mood is very complicated, and this base isn't really poorly made. It doesn't have bad ideas. Individual bedrooms do give more mood than a barracks. A separate hospital, a separate research room, a separate kitchen, all these things can be good. But all these things are not robust. And what I mean by robust is, think of this big base as like a expensive, fancy, complicated glass skyscraper. It has a ton of maintenance and a ton of things to do just to keep it running. And when those things fail, a colonist will break, or a colonist doesn't do his job, or a colonist has to walk far, it causes more problems, which causes more breaks and more walking. And it's just a cascade of failures over and over and over and over again. So like the colonists have to go clean the hospital, and then they've got to walk across the map and clean the bedrooms. And then they've got to walk across the map and clean this and clean that. There's lots of hauling. There's lots of cleaning. There's lots of walking. And when things go wrong, it gets bad. So it's not robust. So I'm going to move everything into one place. Rather than having a glass skyscraper, we're going to have a concrete bunker. Everything is in one spot. There isn't a lot of cleaning to do because we're only going to clean in one place. There isn't a lot of hauling to do because everything's in one place. Keep it simple. Yes, the barracks will have a little bit less mood than bedrooms if the bedrooms worked perfectly. But they're not. The bedrooms are dirty. They're all awful. We're going to focus on mood by going for a few mood buffs. So besides the very impressive barracks, we can get the very impressive rec room, the very impressive dining room. We can also get some from comfort, beauty, and recreation. So you might have saw that triphasic schedule where I have all recreation scheduled and 3 sets of sleep. If you bring up a colonist need bar, you can see little notches on the bars like comfort and recreation each have notches. Those notches represent different amounts of mood. So by keeping the recreation bar at the top, we can get up to plus 10 mood. By keeping comfort at the top, that's another plus 10. By keeping rest away from the bottom, we're avoiding drowsy -6 debuffs. So that triphasic schedule keeps recreation and comfort and rest all in positive mood buff territory. Sure, a lot of things don't get done because people are mostly doing recreation, but we've minimized the walking trips by keeping everyone in a small area. If you have to walk very far, the triphasic schedule is pretty terrible. But by keeping walking distances short, doing lots of walks for recreation trips is no big deal. We're also going to... so here's the first. The insects go hostile for 10 seconds, and I just need to cower and hide. You see one mined a wall there. So we just let them go back, we let the timer go off, and then we repair what they made, and we're going to need to make lots of stone walls. Another thing we can go for mood is beauty. Beauty isn't just the room stat beauty, where you can put in like flowers or art in a room and get it to very impressive. Each area of a room has a certain beauty amount, and when you bring up the beauty display, I think it's either the G or the T key, you'll see like a range of numbers. That's the range of beauty around a certain place. So you can see I've put a lot of the sculptures all in one spot, so anytime colonists are around that area, they're gaining beauty, and that can be plus 5 mood for pretty environment. There's one for plus 10 mood, I can't remember what it's called. But if you get to 6 beauty in an area, like if you bring up that beauty display and it shows a 6 or higher, that's plus 15. Gorgeous environment. So here's all the moods we're shooting for with the triphasic schedule and beauty in one place. We're shooting for gorgeous environment plus 15. We're shooting for spacious environment plus 5. We're shooting for very impressive barracks, very impressive dining room, very impressive recreation room. We're shooting for plus 10, luxuriantly comfortable. We're getting that one by sleeping 3 times a day, where the bed gives maximum amount of comfort. And then we've got recreation scheduled all day, so we keep that topped up. So recreation fully satisfied plus 10. So recreation plus 10, comfort plus 10, gorgeous environment plus 15, spacious environment plus 5. You're getting 40 mood before sorry about all that wall of numbers probably isn't helpful, but that is a ton of mood buffs. by keeping everything in a barracks, keeping everything together, and doing the triphasic schedule. Another thing about robustness is cleanliness. It's very easy to have cleanliness maintained in a large room. And the reason for that is cleanliness is sort of an average of the area. So when I immediately loaded the save, the first thing I checked, I brought up the cleanliness and I looked at the kitchen. And the sterile kitchen in a tiny room, it had like 2 pieces of dirt. And the cleanliness was worse than negative 2.0. If a kitchen is worse than negative 2.0, you can get dirty cooking area food poisoning. So 2.0 is the breakpoint where that can happen. If your kitchen is better than negative 2.0, it's impossible. So this sterile kitchen, once it gets 2 pieces of blood on it, it was getting dirty food cooking area. By incorporating the kitchen into this large room, it's the average of the entire room's cleanliness. So the room would need to be essentially entirely covered in blood. There need to be thousands of piles of blood for it to be worse than negative 2.0. So that's robustness. The separate kitchen can be good only if it's maintained. And we didn't have enough ability to maintain that, so we've incorporated the kitchen now into the big room. So we have got one gigantic room where we keep everyone and keep their mood under control. So for mood, we're using a schedule for lots of recreation, lots of comfort, lots of rest, keep them in a beautiful area, and keep it simple and small. And now we're going to wall in this area in stone, so when the insects get hostile, they hopefully won't bash into us too much. Sorry, all those numbers, I just sort of ranted them off at you. Hopefully I'll make a fancier guide on that with more details at some point. So I like the ideas of separate recreation rooms, separate hospitals, separate kitchens, separate bedrooms. But in this setup, you have to walk all the way across to them. Anytime you transition from dirt to not dirt, you have a chance to track dirt. We're keeping everyone mostly on flooring now, so there's a lot less dirt being made, smaller areas to be cleaned. Oh, I had to take a bathroom break right here. So by keeping it smaller, we have less areas to be cleaned, less areas to walk. Any time spent walking is time not spent working, so we don't want to be walking around all the places. There is a mortar, but I didn't even look at mortar shells. So this is ideology and royalty. I honestly still don't know what the ideologies were in this base. I didn't really check. There were multiple ideologies. You can see there's a bunch of altars disrespected. I took all the statues out of them. Having the beauty plus mood buff is bigger than the penalty for all these desecrated things. So I don't care about desecrating the temples. I'd rather give everyone the plus 15 plus whatever gorgeous environment. And since the traders just walked into the insects, we need to cower in the base. So I've made a safe area inside our walls, and we're just going to hope they don't break. And we've lit them de-aggro. And we're going to repair what's made. So we're going to keep making things out of stone. So now we have gotten stable. We've sort of got food under control. We can always just slaughter the animals. We've got mood under control by converting this base into a concrete bunker rather than the glass skyscraper. We're just ignoring, we're letting the hospital die, we're letting the research room die, we're letting all the bedrooms die. We simply can't defend them, and constantly walking to them and walking back, walking to clean, walking back, just wastes too much colonist time. For now, we need to simplify things. And there goes a generator. Weren't going to be able to defend that. We're intentionally not shooting and not damaging the insects. And again, this is my first time on this save. There's a ton of health conditions on the colonists. I don't know what they are. All the colonists have traits and stuff. I didn't have time to look at them. I honestly don't know how slavery works in Rimworld at all, so I didn't really concern myself with the slaves. I just figured if they died, who cares? If they left, who cares? Whatever. Oh, so I forgot one colonist, so I just had to run out the timer. We ran away, and we waited until the insects despawned, or de-aggroed. But now they're sleeping nearby, and some of them will likely mine nearby, and that's not good. So I'm setting up this western area so I can potentially melee block and chuck grenades from down there as well. I've also made Go Juice and Yayo. Go Juice is terrific for emergency combat. Yayo is terrific for emergency mood. You can see lots of people are idling. That's fine. They're not getting themselves killed. That's all I care about. If they're idling, that means all the areas we have are clean. Everyone's mood is somewhat good. I mean, there were a bunch of colonists who died right before I loaded the save, so some people had, like, their spouses died, some people had other things. We're getting low on food. I'm having trouble going to the animals to slaughter them, because there's a big pile of insects right there. So we're desperate on food, and I'm holding the people back to make sure they don't eat the raw food. Let me cook some meals. We're getting our drugs up. We're letting people go outside a little bit. Let's not even try to make that geothermal again. So with this infestation there, and anytime one takes damage, I can't even easily walk to the animals to slaughter them all. And I'm trying to somewhat maintain the herd, hopefully in the long term. I don't want to just butcher all the animals instantly. I would like to have some long-term hope. Oh, Val was on a psychotic wander, and fortunately they didn't fight back when the insects bashed them, so they would have made it back. A bunch of people are missing toes, a bunch of people are missing kidneys. There was a little bit of mood problems, so I went back to the triphasic schedule. I go to biphasic when I don't need as much mood and want a little more productivity done. But the plan is going to be, we're not really able to enclose the insects in a box and light them on fire. So I'm going to make a box and light the box on fire and then bring the insects to the burn box. So rather than building the burn box at the insects, we're going to bring the animals to the burn box. The first time I attempted this save, I didn't notice the giant pile of uranium, so I made all the walls out of a slate, and that did not go well. You'll see that fight at the end. I just chucked grenades and melee blocked. We were able to kill them, but lots of people died. So this is a heat box, and there's a few important things to know about a heat box like this. Open doors still retain some heat, so I have multiple open doors on both sides. That lets the insects come in and retains lots of the heat. So I'm intentionally building multiple doors to let the heat in. Also, on my side, there is a 1 square gap with no door. That 1 square gap allows... Oh, pirates landed on my head, so this is a natural raid. And of course, it isn't one that goes for the insects. It's pirates that landed on my head. So I just put the slaves next to where the pirates landed and some melee fighters next to where the pirates landed, and then we shot them. And the slaves got beat up, but I don't know how slaves work. I figure that's how you're supposed to use them, right? Just let them get punched in the face, and then we shoot the bad guys. So, unfortunately, the natural raid didn't simply just die to the insects. We had to fight pirates landing on our heads. So, sorry, the burn box will cook you unless you prepare for it. You need to not get cooked. I'll come to that in a second. The best way to make a giant fire is to have single logs. A single log burns as hot as a stack of 75 logs. So I've laid out a ton of singular logs and to light them on fire. And you can lay out singular logs by making wooden fences. Then you haul the wood to the fence. Then don't actually make the fence. You cancel it, forbid the wood. You got tons of stacks of one log. And one log burns, it's based on hit points, and a log's got way more hit points than a fence. So one log burns for a really long time. It burns just as well as a stack of 75 logs. You just want to spread it out, and the fence lets you spread it out. So the heat is going to be kept inside by the open doors. The open doors don't let in so much heat. But also, a singular room that is 1 square and unroofed instantly and always has the outdoor temperature. So I have 1 square rooms on my side, and those 1 square rooms are unroofed. I've made 2 of them because there's an issue with collision. Collision is when the enemies stack on top of each other. We don't want 50 bugs in 1 square. And by having multiple rooms and multiple doors, sometimes there are issues with collision. We just want a singular door between us. So I've got that second little room at the bottom, and I'm going to have a slave stand there to activate collision. It wouldn't work on the top because there are all those doors there. And there is a 1 square gap that is unroofed on both the top one and the bottom one, and that lets all the heat out. It's instantly and always the outdoor temperature. So I've set up a melee block. I've set up slaves to repair the walls. We can have guns 5 deep, so you can have 4 shooters behind without getting any friendly fire. So we can have 12 shooters in the back, and there's a lamp in the way, and I didn't have time to move it. So 1 slave to activate collision, 2 slaves to repair the walls, a melee block, and we're going to light it on fire, and we're just going to let the bugs cook themselves. I should have taken more time and made a complicated ramp and things like that, but I didn't. So here's a melee block. And we're cooking the insects as well. That room is getting to hundreds and almost 1,000 degrees C. We've got uranium walls. The slaves are repairing the walls. When people have mood issues, I'm going to sub them out real quick, and they're going to get food or snort yayo if they need to. A bunch of people have go juice. One thing I'm making a mistake here is by firing at the insects at this point, I'm making them flee. I should be specifically not firing at the insects to lure them in. And you'll see eventually I figure that out, that I should stop shooting at the bugs. There we go. Stop shooting at the bugs. They'll come in a bit more. And then turn it on when they get close. I'm not doing a good job at this point, but eventually I'll figure it out. So this was a fairly poorly executed burn box, but it's still able to defeat the insects. I should have made a complex maze with stone walls. I could have fit in way more insects. Maybe I should have waited longer before lighting it on fire. Lots of things went wrong. I'm still having trouble managing mood. But this is one way to handle a giant and crazy infestation like this. Rather than putting the burn box around the insects, make a burn box and bring the enemies to you. Again, keep a few things in mind. You want multiple open doors on both sides to retain the heat, but let the enemies pass through. On your side, you need 1 square gap rooms that are unroofed with no door to let the heat out so you don't cook yourself. Then after that, just keep mood under control, keep people repairing the walls, and do a melee block like normal. You could even mix in grenade throwing if you wanted to. So now the fire's mostly out, so we're going to see the insects come. So I've turned off shooting to lure in a bunch. Now we'll just gun them down. There's a whole lot of insects. So the reason we took 2 hours of build-up and managing mood, because this fight is going to last so long that if mood wasn't under control, we simply would have had so many mental breaks by now. I even still have to sub out people and go eat food, go do recreation, go take drugs, and then go return to the fight. I don't know how many hours this fight lasted, but it was an enormously long time. Think of mood as 8 per hour. Every 8 mood you gain is another hour you can fight. Mood at most can only fall 8 per hour. Even if it's like negative 100 psychic drone, doesn't matter. The mood's only going to fall 8 per hour. So I'm giving everybody a quick recreation break, quick sleep break, quick recovery, but we need to go now because the insects will respawn at the hives. So we need to go shoot out all these hives right now, clean them up. So that was the basics of fixing up the save. First was robustness. Rather than having a complex base that's potentially better, we'll keep it simple to get mood higher. And then, once mood is under control, set up a melee defense and a burn box. Here is the same thing, but this time I just used grenades, and this was my first attempt. That burn box was my second attempt. This one was my first attempt. And it came with a regular raid, and the regular raid pissed off the insects. And I tried to do the grenade chucking method, but some of the slate walls didn't last very long. Some of my grenade chucking was off. The melee blockers died, and the slaves all died, but everybody with a gun lived. and all the insects died. So somebody made it out just fine. So this, what we're watching here, this was my first attempt at this save. No pause, no idea what was going on. And I still had people chucking grenades at our base. I needed to switch them off guns. But we cleaned it up. And good to go. So, get mood under control, keep things simple, and by keeping mood under control, you can last so much longer in crazy fights. This has been a ton of fun. My name is Mortal Smurf. Thank you for hanging out with me. I will be uploading this save, and I took saves at a few points, so if you want to try it for yourself, feel free to do so. Thank you for hanging out with me.